Langford, can you read the motion back? I think,
Motion to approve authorization administration to solicit proposals for financial audit of the fiscal 2023 and fiscal 2024 years. But based off the RFP with the following two amendments. You want me to read the amendments?
no, I think that's it. So I think it is approving
The
that.
inclusion of the.
Mr. Dunn, is that your intentions?
I will propose an amendment to my motion.
Okay.
So the amendment would be to adjust the RFP language on page 3. Number 2, under audit examination. To include just the 2023, 2024 fiscal years.
Okay, we have a motion to amend. We have a second.
Second.
Okay,
I don't think this board can bind a future board to future audit work or audit firms. That's something that the next board should act upon for the 25 audit, I guess, in my opinion.
is there any other discussion from the other board members?
I agree with that.
Marsh, do you have any comments?
I do not. I agree with what's been said.
Nothing to add.
Okay, Mrs. Langford, you call the roll on the amendment.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Wheeler. Aye. Swint,
Aye.
Hasmer,
Aye.
Junt,
Aye.
Brenner.
Aye, motion passes. Now we're on to the full motion. Is there any other comments before we call the roll? Okay, hearing nothing, Mrs. Langford, you can call the roll on the full motion.
Wheeler. Aye. Swint,
Aye.
Hasmer,
Aye.
Junt,
Aye.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Brenner.
Aye, motion passes. We're on to item number 5. Discussion and approval by final Williston Basin School District number 7. 24-25 budget. What's the board's wishes here?
We discuss or ask questions here before.
Yeah, is there any type of information that you can provide Mr. Arnold about the page for question?
Yeah, I emailed last night, but also I put in front of you a copy of it. Just the supplemental information for. And here's what was presented on. Just the first bullet point, I mean, ultimately the mills can be set. You know, what the board deems necessary, we'll just need direction on. Where we need to take cuts from. Another point, if measure 4 passes, we've been told that schools will be funded going forward for the foreseeable future. Whatever we have levied and adopted for fiscal year 25. Also, you know, with this, we're projecting that we're able to have the fund balance left or, budget left in this current year. We're also planning for future years to come. So one of the big things with that is we will be opening up a new school in 2 years. Yes, a lot of the teaching staff will move from other buildings, but you're still needing support staff, custodial maintenance, clerical, food service, admin. So in order, for us to expand what we're able to do, we need to build capacity, build fund balance within our system to be able to absorb that when it does happen. Also, with the combination of local mills and state aid funding, that does affect somewhat within our state funding because they're expecting or realizing that districts generally levy the full amount. But they also look at too, that if you don't take as much local, that, you know, they kind of look at you like a rich district, and so then there's a factor in there that they'll, you know, start taking. It has an effect anyway on your state funding, but there's also a compounding effect that if you decrease that, you know, you're not really able to regain that going forward, because you'd have to, you know, double up going forward sometime in order to make that up. So you're losing future spending authority, future budget authority down the road by not taking what the state allows you to do in century code.
I just got a brief question on
Yeah.
that point real quick, Mr. Chairman. Can you explain that a little bit? Because my understanding of the funding formula is you do not see any decrease in your state aid so long as you're levying the required 60 mils. So long as the district levies at least 60, there's no impact on the state aid. Are you saying if we go below 70 down to 68 or 65, that will impact our funding?
In the long run, it does, because of the because they're looking at, you know, your history also. I mean, the 60 is the factor point, or however, what I can't remember what's terminology they call it. But then down the road, as you look at the next years, there's factors in there down below that will affect what you can levy, you know, going forward, but also and I can't remember all the particulars or the background of it. But that all of the factors inside the formula basically results in, I mean, it's not huge, but there are some things, and I can get more information on that too, but
Mr. Chairman, if I may as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would share that this sentiment exists also in the park district world within the state. There is a human element to this, where if you don't use it, you lose it type of mentality when it comes to levying mills, especially in today's circumstance with the property tax element on the table. So that is to speak to what Mr. Arnold is talking to. In the state of North Dakota, we do feel that on the park district world as well when it comes to levying mills and state dollars.
Are there any other questions before we move on here?
and then the other part of that is the needs of the district. It's been kind of brought to my attention too that prior business managers haven't included in the budget the empty positions going into the year. So we've got, you know, positions that weren't necessarily hired, but have had people in them before. Yes, some of them are just, you know, because of changes in things, but I think we have 3 positions at the math positions at the high school that we need. So there's things like that, but instructional coaches were taken out and put into the classroom last year. Interventionists, student technology replacement. So the district has worked hard on getting, you know, 1-to-1 and things like that, but those don't last forever. So we've got to maintain those things. Deferred maintenance. I mean, we could spend the whole 85 million on deferred maintenance and not even have probably half of it done. And then yesterday is a prime example of things happening, the gas leak. So after it was all said and done, MDU has come back to us flagged that if we don't put a plan in place to replace the piping or the gas lines coming into the building, that they probably won't pass us, you know, later on. So we're looking at Eric says 200,000, but it's hard telling what, when you're starting to deal with that. I did remove the special reserve levy. Oh, Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to have a point of clarification, and when you initially started, you talked about previous business managers not having a placeholder for unfilled positions. That's not accurate. We've had placeholders for unfilled positions within the budget.
Well, there's placeholders, but the money really hasn't been allocated for them. I mean, they're there. But the,
I tend to differ. I don't remember it in that fashion, and I've served on this board for 8 years.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to go first. If we're not forgetting, I sat on those committees.
Yeah.
For personnel finance, and I have witnessed those planned for and budgeted for in previous years, so I'm not sure who shared that information with you. But I would find that to be an inaccurate statement as well, because those were previously shown to us as budgeted items, though the way it was always described is they will budget for them, though they do not expect to fill them, was the statement said at those planning committee meetings. So I would be surprised that that's a statement that you were told.
Correct.
And some of them were, but not all. I don't think, but some were, I agree. I don't think all, but
Okay, previous business manager and budget that was presented to the board last year did not budget for all of the open positions that were out there. And the decision that was made was there was very likely was not possible to hire staff for that. So it is accurate that they weren't all budgeted for. There were some positions that he did leave in the budget, but not like what you're describing in the past where all the open positions were budgeted for. So that's the fact.
School board?
Yes, it was.
I said, is there a reason that wasn't shared in that manner with the school board?
It was shared in that manner.
Unfortunately, no, it was not.
I didn't.
Not in that way. It was, and I don't mean to speak over you, Mr. Swint, but not in that way. It was presented that these are placeholds for unfilled positions. And I mean, you've got 2 board members telling me that it was not presented in that way.
Okay, well, we can.
So I just wanted that
I'm
point of
telling you the
clarification.
facts as to what the business manager included in his budget.
Okay, we'll move on here, Mr. Arnold. What else do you have for us?
So the special reserve levy, the 0.93 mils, you take that off. So just for an example, like a 5 mil decrease is about 1.4 million decrease. Mentioned the 70 mils in the general fund. And then there was also a question asked about the one-time teacher retention stipend that was paid this year, the $3,000. The 3,000 was 1.1 million and about 85,000 in FICA and Social Security and stuff that the district had to pay. So a total of 1.188 million was what that cost the district this year. And just wanted to point out that, I pride myself in being fiscally responsible for the tax dollars that the district receives. And, we want to make sure that things are spent prudently. They're not, wasteful dollars. And anytime you do talk about tax dollars, that's a huge point that, public brings up. But we want to be open, transparent, as we go. What are our expectations? What have we done? What are our accomplishments that we've done? Prime example with the bond election. We're building a new school. They're going to be able to see that, so that there's a lot of things behind the scenes that they don't see. The not so pretty things of the gas line replacement, the roof replacement, HVAC replacement. So those things like that, we need to point out that, or I guess show that, we are doing things to extend the life of our facilities. And of course, people is another big thing that the budgets go to. And then also coming into November, Measure 4, the presidential election, we just don't know what is gonna happen. And I guess the biggest thing with that is the Measure 4 that, if that passes, we're stuck with what we do this year, going forward until they figure out what we're gonna do for funding the state in years to come, so.
Dr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to add a couple of things just to kind of set the context of the challenges within the Williston Basin School District number 7. First and foremost, I'll talk about position control. We are at a point now that we will be able to share the information and data with our administrators moving forward in each building and our board. Prior to my arrival, we did not have a position control document, and that may be some of the confusion that has been created with what positions are open and what positions aren't open. If you go back to 2021, 2022, there were a number of positions that were included in the budget. There were some that my understanding were not included in the budget. And that has created a challenge for anyone who's budgeting or creating a budget in our school district when 80%, approximately 80% of the dollars that we utilize are for personnel expenses. So last year, we made a very difficult decision to move our folks from instructional coach roles into the classroom to meet the needs of a growing school district. We are growing in numbers. We are growing in numbers and challenges with our special needs population. We have administrators in the building that are meeting with us next week to have very focused conversations on how we can assist them with the staff that they're needing based on the elevated needs of the kids that are coming to our schools. And that's something I think that, we need to keep a laser focus on that, because there are significant mental health issues in this community with our kids. There are significant special needs issues with our children. And on top of that, we have, thank goodness, the board that was in place did our deferred maintenance study. We have buildings that have that are aged, that are in need of repair. And you've seen a couple of examples of that over the course of the last 7-8 months, where we've had to repair some of the buildings. We've had studies done determining end of life on some of those. And we don't have a direct funding source to be able to accomplish the tasks and challenges that lie ahead. And whatever the decision is in that regard, we need to repair gas lines, and we need to repair plumbing and mechanicals, so that the buildings that we are utilizing are going to be solid and good for the next generation of learners, because we are not going to be able to build enough schools to take those schools offline in the future currently with our capacity. Now, that could all change. Things can change. But I would point to the deferred maintenance as, how are we going to fund some of these replacements in boilers and air conditioning, et cetera? How are we going to fund the replacement of some of the other things that are associated? Our roofs in the district are in terrible shape. And as superintendent of schools, as business manager, we're trying to create a structure that into the future, we'll be able to address some of these things. But if we don't have the resources to do that, and we're unable to put the monies that we need to put in the places that we need to put them, I think we're gonna have even more challenges down the road because things don't get cheaper, they get more expensive. And from my perspective, with Measure 4, it's a gray area. And it's an area where it could destroy public education and many other entities across the state. And like I said, that's for the voters to decide, but we have to do a good job of being prepared for the future. And the budget that we presented, I think, gives us some opportunity to check some of the boxes that we need to check moving forward, specifically with deferred maintenance. Having that position control that's never existed for HR in the business office to be able to tell one another that here's how many positions, how many teachers, how many support staff, how many paras, general, special ed, so we can start to work on some of the things that are in our strategic plan with equity. Because right now, it's not. And we need to get, that's why I've pushed so hard for this position control so that we can start having those conversations with the board and with our administration, because they are frustrated about what's going on in their schools. And they've communicated that. Thank you.
Board members, do you have any questions before I open the floor up here? Dr. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question on the expenditure side, there's approximately a $1.4 million call it a debt service payment that is essentially paid through the general fund related to, I think that loan was with Bank North Dakota. It was that state aid refunding certificate of indebtedness. Is that included in budget here somewhere? And if so, where?
So the, from what I gathered from the, so that is the one that, the old fund 11. But it's included with the debt service in the sinking and interest fund. And so the other, and just a little clarification too, I printed out the last page of the presentation from Monday, but I updated a few things. And just to kind of explain a little bit too with the funds. So the general fund basically is we're adopting the budget, that we don't have the dollars in our pocket. But the other funds operate off of fund balance, but then they also get a little bit of, or some levy revenue or levy income in them. So like the big question was with the capital projects fund. So, and I updated that. So basically with the 24,410,000 is the fund balance, less reserves, but that also includes, because we're getting about 4 million in levies for that, or in revenue for the year. But with that, 20 million of that fund balance, 20 million is earmarked for the new elementary, which was part of the bond election. The 1.5 million for bond payments, because there are some bonds that have to be paid out of the building fund. And then also with the CTE project, there's about 1.5 million of that balance left to that goes to the CTE center. That's more for equipment, supplies, things like that to get the center up and running. And then so that leaves just a little over $1 million for the deferred maintenance. So our capital projects fund doesn't go anywhere near to enough to cover for the deferred maintenance, which falls back into the general fund. But then the sinking interest fund is just basically to make the principal and interest payments for the year. And then food service is just, there's self-sufficient, there's no levies. And so it's just kind of an average and a little bit of an increase based on food count and our plates served. And then the activity fund, again, is just kind of more of an average of what they do for fundraisers, athletic events, things like that. So, and there's no levies or tax dollars in the activity fund either.
Mr. Arnold, the question was about the former District 1 borrowed against their state aid. And previous years, we've been paying that payment, that principal interest payment out of the general. I guess the question is that accounted for in the proposed budget? Or are you saying you move it to sinking in interest?
I'll have to clarify where that's at, because I just kind of went off of what was already put in with the preliminary budget before I got here, but I believe that is what was used to be called Fund 11. And it does come from the general fund. But I will get clarification on that for sure. But also on that county sheet that is put up here, in the sinking fund, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it too, but you can see in red down there that, and it's why we get the taxable value for District 7 versus just District 1, is that some of those mills, a big portion of them have to stay within the old boundaries of District 1. And then the other stuff is the new District 7. So so that's why I guess I was assuming that's where you were talking about, but now that you mentioned, I know there is, when I looked back, something that goes in Fund 11, which then feeds from the general fund. So I will get some clarification on that.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I would say the mills and the dollars listed on that page that's up on the screen would not be accurate, because we're not levying a sinking and interest fund levy associated with that payment on the state aid refunding. As I recall, that was a audit issue on the last District 1 audit, whereby we needed to set up a separate certificate of indebtedness fund, where there was money transferred from the general fund to that certificate of indebtedness fund. And I'm just looking at board action that was taken last year on the 23-24 budget, and there was a specific certificate of indebtedness fund listed there for that payment, which was $1,385,800. So that should not be in our sinking and interest fund levy, because we're not levying the property tax payers to make that payment.
Yeah, because I was just going off what Paul had figured on that, so yeah, I can get some clarification, because I know that payment has been made.
As it relates to the special reserve fund, what is the current balance in that fund?
The 1.2 million.
Okay, my follow-up question to that would be then, what did we spend $700,000 on out of that fund? The last report I saw was 1.9 million in that fund as of April of last year, or April of this year, excuse me.
The computer's locked up, so.
My understanding, we can only spend 50% of whatever's in that fund, is the reason I asked the question.
board members, any other questions here?
I have some questions, but I don't know if we need to get a motion before I abstain.
Are they, like, we have Mr. Arnold, Dr. Fady?
Yep.
I think if we get our questions answered, then I would, give everyone one chance to speak, and I'd call for a motion.
Are you ready for my questions? Do you need a minute to look for that, to finalize the questions from Jen?
Let me get this filtering and then I can.
Okay, I'll give you a moment.
It is 1.998. I just thought it was 1.7, so. It is 1.9 million, almost 2 million that are in there, so.
So is it your guys' understanding that we can spend more than 50% of that balance or?
From what I've been reading, if you are short in the general fund and need to transfer from the special reserve into the general fund, you're limited to 15 or 50%. And then that requires a action by the board to do that. But you have to be short in payroll, heating, electric, basically utilities. So you just have to show the shortage, but yeah, you're limited to the 50% to make up for that. And but two, with the special reserve fund, it seems like nobody really knows what the law says because it's been changed and repealed and added to and subtracted from. And so I'm going off of what visiting with other school districts that, like I mentioned on Monday, that some of them use it for special projects. Some of the towns that are building new schools, they'll use it kind of as a supplemental or to make cover any the classroom and things like that. So. But I know there's been a discussion around superintendents and business managers across the state trying to figure out really for sure what can and can't be done. And a lot of them have said, well, it just kind of depends on your auditor, what they allow or what they see it as too, so.
Peter, you have questions?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the differences between the documents that were presented to us on Monday at the board meeting and the documents presented today.
So the one big one is that so basically like on the sped stuff, it got put up into other line items. So I mean, the total as a whole isn't changed, but it's just the line items. So when the system filtered and combined, because like with sped, the 200 or 2XX program codes are what determines sped. Well, it got rolled up into other just regular education stuff. So I went through and manually went through and verified those because I knew that there had to be more because we've got teachers and paras now on our books that were before on Wilmac. So when I was able to go through there, I was found that they were put up just in the regular ed budgets by elementary, middle school, and high school. So I pulled those out and was able to get them into the correct items. It's not that they weren't there, it was just not labeled correctly.
Okay.
And
Because
that may change a little bit as we go, because I'm working with Wilmac to make sure that, you know, what we have as sped, you know, did come from them, or that they're providing, you know, what services are needed to qualify for sped and all of that too, because we've got a what they call maintenance of effort. So as a public school, we have to meet or exceed prior year expenditures, but this is going to be an anomaly year because we, you know, only had a little bit last year compared to this year. So we're working with them and making sure that all the state reports are done correctly. And so it's going to be kind of a transition year in the sped area.
understood, and I can appreciate that. It just. When the public hearing happened. Was inaccurate information given to the public during the public hearing. And the reason I ask that is because the documents that we received on Monday say one set of numbers. The documents that we received today say a completely different set of numbers. Even as it results to the 23-24, the numbers are different.
23 and 24 changed.
Yes, they did. The total operating budget for title or section 5 and 6 for 23-24 listed as 65,471, and Monday's document said 63,213.
So it's.
So I have both documents up.
Some of it was though, probably when I moved the sped stuff, because it's gonna change the sections.
Oh, I understand that, and I can completely understand that, wrap my head around for 24-25. That makes complete sense, and I understand that part. The part that I don't understand is why did it change from 23-24 last year? That budget's done.
Well, though, when I ran the reports out of the system, that, you know, it combined some things, so I went back and made sure that, you know, things were accurate in the prior year too, as far as where they were allocated to.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then, I think too, yesterday I was working with Emily that does our sped stuff, and so we found some more. You know, she was going through verifying and checking, you know, where our title stuff was at. So we've had some things from actually 22-23 that adjusted 23-24, which again even adjusts a little bit, you know, what we may see. It won't affect the budget, but the actuals and things like that will be a little bit different in that, you know, like I mentioned on Monday, that when we're looking at those prior year titles, the budget in the prior years are done in the prior years. So it's just like in this year when we receive it, because we're not actually getting the dollars in our bank until this year, that it goes to our fund balance because we've already expended that stuff. So
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions?
Not at the moment.
Board members, do you have any other questions?
I think we've got to get a good understanding if the board is going to act upon the final certificate of levy that's proposed here, particularly on the sinking and interest. That number needs to be correct, and looking at the final budget that was approved last year, we had sinking and interest fund of $2,520,000. We're adding this year for the new elementary school bond, 2.3 million change. Certainly the sinking and interest payments can change a little bit on the existing debt, but 2.5 and 2.3 is 4.8 million. That certificate of indebtedness for 1.3 or 1.5, if that was in that number, we're well over $6 million. So I don't think that 1.3 or 1.4 million debt payment that's been paid out of the general fund is included in here. Just doing the math, there's just no way it can be in sinking an interest fund number. Unless we had a lot of debt that paid off between last year and this year.
Mr. Arnold, Dr. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide some additional context. The budget that was developed last year was developed on spreadsheets. It was not entered into the financial system, Tyler system. Mr. Arnold has spent the better part of the last 6 weeks making sure that things are in the financial system so that we can run the reports that we are needing to run, not only for the state, but also for, the federal title monies. And he's placed our budget and the information in that system. And prior to that, it was not being utilized, say it that way, and it was done on spreadsheets. The second point I will make, and I am not 100% sure on when the debt falls off from our sinking and interest. I don't have that document pulled up in front of me, but it's my understanding that we're going to have some of our debt fall off during the 24-25 school year. Chris, if I
don't know which one it's called, but October 1, there was a payment.
that was the final payment that we're at.
Was the series?
Like I said, I don't know the amount of that over the course of the year, but I do know that we also have a second one that is going to be coming off the books, and I don't know the exact date, but we have two that are, one that I know for sure is done, and one that is I don't know
This
the
just
time.
has to be submitted to the county. Is it tomorrow by noon?
Yeah.
I don't know how we can approve this. There's just a lot of questions still. I feel this needs to be postponed again until tomorrow at 7 AM. I don't know how we can approve this if this is the question the board members have. I went back and listened to Monday night's meeting, and I don't feel like the board had a lot of concerns. I'm not sure that they've been addressed at this meeting yet. Have they?
No.
For possibility to do it later today. No,
I don't have a comfort level to approve this. I mean, the explanations are not jiving, and me just pulling out a random page and doing a comparison of what we saw on Monday and what we saw today, and numbers don't match. And then I go back to my initial question, which was what was presented to the public. I mean, if the information that was presented to the public on Monday is the information that we received on Monday, if that's what was presented to the public, that was inaccurate information on a number of lines. So what was presented was not correct, and now it's being presented again as being inaccurate. I'm not comfortable. And I don't think I'm the only one.
Here's what I think is the board's got a couple options on them. They could adopt this as presented. They could amend it, or they could postpone this to a special meeting either tonight or morning. I think if we're gonna postpone till tomorrow till tomorrow night, this evening, or tomorrow morning, then there needs to be some direction given on what we need to see, or we can approve this.
I can do tonight, but I cannot do tomorrow morning before 10 AM.
Well, I'll open it up the floor for a motion. We really gotta get this in going. We're gonna have it now. I feel like we made any progress. I'm gonna call for a motion on.
the main motion we got tonight. Is there enough time for you to answer these questions?
Yeah, because the biggest one's gonna be on sinking in interest.
Taking an interest, that seems to be the big problem.
To see what was done before I got here.
Right, well, and I understand, I mean, when you got here, we don't know that our books were correct then, to tell you the truth. I don't believe they are, from what I see. I think our books from our last business guy were correct, but I'm not a book guy, you know, so I don't know for sure. I just, looks to me like they weren't. So if we can do it tonight, I'll make a motion that we have a meeting tonight at 6 o'clock.
8 o'clock would be better.
I didn't think that it would have to be late. Like
8 o'clock. Okay, I make a motion, we do it today.
Okay, you have a motion to tonight, but for a second,
I'll second that.
okay, we have a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah,
I have a, go ahead.
Sorry.
I would just kind of step in and really for my fellow board members, kind of what we're looking for here, keep conversation particular to mill levies. That is what we're looking at, is what are we levying? What is our total levy and what are we levying for? I think what's important is right now with the current landscape and levying mills is, unless, for everything I've heard in the park district world, unless a local ordinance is preventing that organization from doing so, just about every mill levying organization is reaching for that top mill levy amount because of circumstance, and using those, that levy is going to be used just in case Measure 4 comes through. It's an interesting year as far as future years and what future funding can be dictated by how we address our mill levy. So we have to have this conversation in particular to current circumstance, as well as previous years and what's happened with mill levies in previous years, and what's going on with our local political culture in Williston and the microscope the district's under. I don't think as much attention should be paid to individual line items and how those may fluctuate based on the fact that Mr. Arnold has only been in his position for a little over a month, and he's diving into a spreadsheet he did not create. And there's going to be a history of that as he figures out how to use that spreadsheet and implement that into the Tyler systems. What we should be focusing on is, what are we doing with mills? And how are we communicating that to the public based on current needs and the uneasy landscape we're trying to navigate right now, just like every other organization is in the state. So just please, when there's going to be mistakes, we just have to make sure that we're keeping the conversation on specific things when we're talking about this, and not lumping that into the other issues that we're facing as a local organization in Williston.
A couple. So obviously we have the listing of our debts outstanding, so it should be relatively easy to pull what our sinking and interest payments are on the current debt. And we obviously have the new elementary bond already calculated on the sheet. My interpretation of the Century Code, we cannot access more than 50% of that special reserve fund. So I, as one board member, would not be comfortable approving expenditures exceeding any more than 50% of that current fund balance. And if we are missing significant expenditures in the budget, such as the 1.3 or 1.4 million on the state aid debt, as I'll call it, that makes it difficult for me as a board member to decide if I should keep the mills the same or if I should go down on some of these mills, because we're looking at huge increases across the board. It's up $12 million on state aid. Granted, I understand some of that is Wilmette from last year that's now rolling up underneath us, but the expenses are increasing very rapidly in this district. We budgeted $60.8 million 2 years ago in 2023, and we're proposing $85.5 million. That's a $25 million increase in 2 years. We talk a lot about deferred maintenance, operational maintenance. The only way you're going to put a big dent in that is to go back to the taxpayers at some point. It's gonna either be to increase your building fund levy to 20, or it's gonna be an operational maintenance bond vote. And if we don't do what we can to limit the increases to the local property tax owners when we're looking at this budget this year, they're not going to vote on either one of those options in the future.
Yeah,
Just for clarification, Mr. Arnold, when did you start giving input on the budget itself?
I started September fourth. I mean, for the most part, the budget was done, it was just interpreting it. I mean, the total hasn't changed. It just, I mean, if you want line item budget, I mean, I can give you a line item budget. And if you want to be able to vote on each line item, you can do that. But my whole thing is that we haven't changed the total. Yes, things have moved in the budget based on clarification and things like that, but we haven't added anything to the budget.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with Joe Barber. And I think we need, with the uncertainty, we need all the money we can, possibly give for our tax salaries, but for taxpayers. And I gave them who pays the taxes. I gave it to everybody and who pays the taxes, and I think we're getting a real good deal. Actually, the average tax dollar, the guy, homeowner. I think in this case, in Williams County, we're getting a good deal. I mean, and we need, the one thing we do need in Williston and Williams County are good schools. And we need up-to-date schools. And we haven't had to address them for many, many years, and we finally are trying to address that. And in getting up-to-date stuff, we need money to pay for it. So to ask the taxpayer, I haven't heard of anybody, complain about the taxes. Really. I mean, obviously, Measure 4 has brought it up, about property taxes. And if that passes, I think we're in a world of hurt. And I think we need as many mills, as much money as we can in the 25 budget. In case that does. We can address, giving money back, at a later date, but I believe we need to ask for as much as we can. That's my belief. And it's how we spend the money. It's not how much money we get, it's about how we spend that money. And I agree, we need to know what category all this money is, in order to make a decision, but it's all about how we spend the money, because we have so much needs. I mean, we evacuated a school because of $200,000 worth of needs that needs to be done yesterday. How many more times is that gonna happen? For us not to take care of our needs. I just think we need all the money we can get in the school district. That's my.
If I may, well, one last comment. I think in response to what people are going to vote for and what people are going to support, and I would just say here, I ran for this board to help with transparency, to actually communicate what the school district needs, and the reality is you got to fight what you're facing first. And the thing that this school district is facing right now is a reality that if we don't secure our funds this year, there's a chance that we will lose our funds in the future if Measure 4 passes. And so I would rather us go for as much funds as we can and then deal with that reality when we cross that bridge, and we can have a conversation of what we give back or what we place aside or how we use excess funds that we might be in a position of having based on current circumstance. The community is going to support what they trust and what they believe. And right now, how can we support our infrastructure if we don't know what staff positions we need in our schools? You need teachers before we probably even need buildings. And so there's a culture of transparency where how can we address exactly how many professional staff or what teachers we need in what schools and what positions we have. Once we've got that figured out, we can address that lens of trust and transparency to get the focus off of that and the focus onto our infrastructure issue, which is probably the biggest issue that we're facing as a school district right now. It's really our infrastructure issue. And I think that comes with trust and transparency. We got to fight what we're facing today, which is, I mean, we might lose these funds if we don't secure them.
Okay, I'll go last here. Thank you, Mr. Barsh. I guess I have concerns that the expenditures from last year to this year are significantly higher. The revenue is significantly higher from last year to this year. And I would agree with all the maintenance issues that need to be fixed. But nobody's actually given me a dollar amount today. And so, you know, I'm here and I got to approve this so we can fix the pipe leading to the middle school, and we don't know what the dollar is. Why can't we fix it? Is there not money in the building fund to fix it? Is there not gonna be money in this general fund to fix it? I guess I'm trying to figure out what we actually need versus what we're just doing just in case Measure 4 passes, because I don't believe that should be the strategy. Let's get the meals up as high as we can in case Measure 4 passes. I don't think Measure 4 is going to pass. If it did for some chance, I think that'll be the job of the state legislators to fix out, to solve. So, but for sure what we need tonight, coming back at 8 o'clock, that's what the motion is on the floor. We need to figure out that loan payment out of the general fund. Is that in the current budget now? We need to have that answered when we come back tonight. What I heard from the board at Monday's meeting is they were questioning whether the mills were too high and whether or not they could be lowered. And what came back to us was, well, if you guys want to lower the mills, then you have to decide. And I don't think that's a good strategy. So I would like to see something tonight on whether or not those mills could be lowered, and not just, well, just we're doing this just in case Measure 4 passes. I don't think that's a good strategy. So would my fellow board members agree with me on that or not? I know Mr. Casmer doesn't agree. Mr. Barge probably wouldn't agree.
Respectfully, Mr. President, I would just say that is the strategy for most taxing organizations throughout the state based on current circumstance. And to Measure 4 is on the table. There's a lot, it depends on where you live, depends on who your circle is right now, whether Measure 4 is gaining steam or losing steam right now. In any case, we got to be able to pay our bills. That's the first thing.
The question, I agree with you. I agree with Mr. Barsh and Mr. Casman also. But at the same time, I still have questions about this that have not been answered. And they're line items, and I understand that I may never get those answers, but you know, we push the transparency, we push that we need to be as open with the public as possible. Yet we have things in this budget that don't add up. Granted, the end line items are the same, but the contents are different. And that is a huge red flag for me.
Okay, any other board members, any final comments for calls?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we've technically taken action on item 5, so I'm gonna make a motion or an amendment for, and I will amend to table the final Williston Basin School District number 7, 2024-2025 budget and to request a special meeting this evening at 8 p.m.
Okay, we have a motion to amend. Second. And a second.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we are providing the board exactly what they are asking for. So first, what I heard was clarity on the sinking and interest fund and what bond payments that are being paid out of that sinking and interest fund. Second was the bond payment that is paid out of state aid that's leveraged against state aid, whether or not that amount is included in the general fund, and what that amount is for the for this budget cycle. The other things I was a little bit unclear on, you know, when you adjust and make adjustments to the budget, the dollars will shift and change. I think one of the things that the budget is an educated researched anticipated expenses that we are going to receive or we are going to expend, as well as the revenues that we are going to receive. So I'm not sure I understand clearly what clarity on those other line items the board might be looking for.
I guess from me, like, I wanna know. I don't think there's been any direction given from this board on getting mills as high as we can in case measure for passing, unless I'm mistaken. Board hasn't given any directions, and part of what I've heard in the budget presentation is that part of this budget is including get the mills as high as we can in case measure for passes. So what's that value then ultimately? I don't feel that's been answered.
Well, I think it was got a huge increase on how much we're getting and how much we're spending. And what is that increase, you know, give us a little more insight on that, how we're spending that much more money. I know we have brought our teachers up quite a bit of pay and so forth, you know, the money that we're giving out, $1 million something for the one-time payment and that type of stuff. So that's all part of it. But if you can give us a little more understanding on how we went from 60 to 80 million, I think that would help too.
I think to further Kyle's point is when we're discussing the mill count and what we're levying, in the conversation of what we're levying in anticipation of Measure 4 and what we're levying in anticipation of regular business activity, I think there should be a distinction there, to Kyle's point. And if we are to go after those excess mills in anticipation of Measure 4, there should be a conversation of how do we operate that value if Measure 4 passes, and how do we operate that value if Measure 4 is to fail, and what are we going to do with those funds to give back, in a way to give back to the taxpayers at that point. I think there should be conversation to that, some preparation to that as well, just so we're not levying a number of mills just in case, and if we get it, that means we just have more money to operate with. That's not responsible, that's not ethical. That should be communicated as well and planned for.
One final comment. So I see it as obviously Measure 4 is on the ballot. I'm more worried about how we're going to fix our schools with the resources that we need to do that. And to Mr. Jones' point, we're not, unless we go back to our taxpayer group and ask them to increase our mills by 10 mills, so that we have an ongoing funding source to address some of the significant issues that were pointed out in the study that was conducted in the past. And that's my concern.
Yes, one last point for me too is, I mean, measure 4 isn't the top priority for why it's. I look at the budget that the state gives us parameters to run within. And so, I mean, we're allowed the 70 mils, we're allowed the full, based on our student population, which we're also increasing, so that counts for, which we'll get those figures, but it's not solely because maybe measure 4. It's because the state has put in century code that as a school district, you are allowed to do this. With the caveat that you're looking out for your local tax payers. And yes, could we lower the mills? Could, but what are we gonna take away for that? Do we cut staff? Do we not put the new roof on the other, on a building, or replace HVAC and things like that? So, I mean, that's, it's not just because of measure 4 that we're asking for that stuff. So.
This for coming to Mr. Swinton.
Just my last statement. One of the things that we've dealt with within this community for an extremely long time has been a lack of trust in how we spend their dollars. We are required to be fiscally responsible. And when I see a budget that has ballooned over the last few years, describe it to me, show me the whys, and you'll get my vote. Otherwise, I protect the taxpayer. That's what it comes down to. We're here to protect the taxpayers. They elect us to protect education in this community, and I will not overtax them just because of a measure that's on a ballot. That's my only position on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swing. Mrs. Langford, you call the roll on the amendment.
Wheeler,
Aye.
Swint,
Aye.
Casmer,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Barsh.
Aye.
Renner,
Aye. Okay, now we're on to the full motions. Langford, you can read that back to us. I think it's basically just specifying. This till 8 p.m.
yeah,
right?
motion that we meet tonight at 8 p.m. Motion to amend to table the final WVSD 7/24/25 budget until a special board meeting tonight at 8 p.m. for a special. This might be quicker. For a meeting to approve the final Williston Basin School District number 7/24/25 budget.
Okay, everybody understand that? Okay, Mrs. Langford, you call the roll.
Swint,
Aye.
Casmer,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Barsh,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
Renner.
Aye. Motion passes. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion, we have a second. Second. Given by Mr. Smith, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We adjourn at 1:20 p.m.